Hi, it's Maria. And today I'm going to do another Forgiveness to Love video. And this one is page 2 of my list of people I have to forgive. And I'm going to keep this pretty concise because I'm going to just talk about two different groups. And one is the stalkers, and then the second one is the medical professionals. And so I think you'll find both of them really interesting. I certainly did. I never even imagined. And so, in terms of the stalkers, it's kind of like the people who show up that you don't want around, and they call those people bad pennies. Well, wouldn't you know that in so many places there were bad pennies, and they were always turned upside down so that the head would be down and the tail would be up. And so that's what you'd see. And what they do say is that, that if the head's up, it's good luck. And if the tail's up, it's not good luck. And so I guess that was just part of another way that they try to spook me. But anyway, it was a sign that I wasn't alone. And actually, I did hear, and I also saw it on the internet, that people order. I mean, you can order these pennies. And what they are is they're either like little batteries or they're like little recorders. So I used to find them on the floor. I'd find them under my bed. I'd actually find them in shoes. I'd find them in my bedroom where I was staying. I'd find them in drawers. And they must be pretty cheap because they were all over. And I would find them in my car, but I'd find them, this was really weird, I'd find them under my mattress. And so it was one day I wanted to flip the mattress over with a friend, and so I asked for help. And so we flipped it, and there were two pennies under there. And I thought, well, how did they get there? But I guess it was I wanted to document conversations or sexual activity. I don't really know. I think it's got to be a felony, right? And so, anyways, and I found them face down at checkout counters. And I found them when I went to sign in for an ultrasound. They were right there on the desk when she handed me the paper for me to add my name and insurance information and things like that. And so there were like two or three bad pennies there. And I thought, oh, so that means the results of this test aren't really going to be accurate, I think. But anyway, I'll go into that because that's the second half of this where I talk about the medical professionals and and that. Anyway, but I found them, yeah, the bad pennies, in grocery stores and all over where I wouldn't miss them. They would be right there. So if there would be even the cement outside, there would be a penny right there. And so I knew that somewhere, some kid that they hired or some stalker guy was there putting that down just to kind of let me know, oh, Maria, we haven't forgotten about you. You're still talking. And so anyway, I wanted to talk to you about the stalkers that when I drove to the Santa Monica Beach, and I told you I was living in Oregon, and I was staying at a friend's apartment, and I decided it was when COVID started, and I decided that I wasn't going to let our whole family just die and not even be able to contact my children. And I wanted to see if they were okay. And so anyway, I thought, I don't care if they don't want to talk to me, if they're so brainwashed. I will, I just know that I have to do the right thing. And so I told you that I rented a car, and I had used all my money to make this trip from Ashland, Oregon to Santa Monica. And I had found my one son's address on Ashland Street. And again, I thought, oh, that must be a sign because that's pretty amazing. And then my other son lived there as well, and his company was headquartered there. And so I thought, oh, I'm going to just surprise them. Well, I went there, and I told you that there was no luck, and so maybe it was their house, but the neighbors told me it wasn't because if they were on my phone, then they knew that I was coming to surprise them, and so um, I ended up going to the Santa Monica Beach, and I thought, well, maybe I would see them there. And actually, there were two instances where I saw my one son, my second son, who's a doctor. I saw him running um, in front of me, but I wasn't like alert enough to just yell out his name. I was just like, oh, there he is. And then another day, I saw him riding his bike, like, shoo, right in front of me along the beach, because in Santa Monica there's kind of like this boardwalk. It's a beautiful beach. And so I would stand there wondering, I wonder if I'll see my son, uh, one of them at least. And so I did see him, but I couldn't reach him, and then I didn't know where he was. And so anyway, when I was there, I met a man. And as we talked, he said to me, he said, you're being watched. And I said, yeah, it's kind of like the story of my life. Never imagined that so many people that I was that interesting, right? And that so many people wanted to know my every move. And so I figured actually that it was private investigators that Greyhound had hired, because that in 2019, in June, I was taking a Greyhound bus from Phoenix, Arizona, where I was living in Scottsdale. So Phoenix, Arizona to Ashland, Oregon, where I wanted to go study with a spiritual teacher. And uh, the first stop was in Blythe, California. And so we all got off. It was a restroom break. And so we all got off. And then I was standing in line to get back on the bus. And there were people in front of me and people behind me. And the ones in front of me had gotten onto the bus. And so it was my turn to get on. Well, the bus driver, I don't know where he was. But anyway, he cut in front of me. So, of course, I stepped back and let him get on the bus. Well, as I was about to put my foot on this first step, all of a sudden, um, the bus door slammed, this huge steel door that must have been like at least a ton, and it just slammed into my face and my head. And then it threw me because the velocity was just so great. And so the force, it just threw me against the side of the bus, because the bus was like this. Okay. And the door was here. And so it just slammed me. And then I hit the side of the bus. And then I hit the left side of my head, and then my whole left side of my body. And then I collapsed. And I lost consciousness. I didn't even remember if I did, because obviously I lost consciousness, so I didn't remember. But all I remember is then there were, I don't know if it was the bus driver or there were two other men, and they were saying, ambulance, ambulance. And then they were like pulling me up. So if I had broken something, they would have actually incurred more damage. I would have incurred more damage. But anyway, so I said, oh my gosh, I was just so out of it, really. And I said, just get me back on there. I have to get to Medford, Oregon, where people were waiting for me. And so I got back on the bus, and it was, I was really traumatized. And after about 5 hours on the bus or something, I was in so much pain that by the time we got to Sacramento, I said, I need an ambulance. I can't take it anymore. And so they did. They ambulanced me to Mercy General, I think, in Sacramento. And so I was there for a while, and they ran some tests. And then I said, well, I don't know anybody here, and I don't want to be here. And so I just need to get back on and go to Medford, Oregon. So that's what I did. And after that, I hired an attorney that knew about brain injuries, because I didn't know what was going to happen, and I didn't have insurance, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And so I thought, I need medical care. And so anyway, I hired an attorney from Dallas. He was someplace else in Texas anyway. And so anyway, when this guy in Santa Monica had said to me, you're being watched, I thought, oh, it's the Greyhound people, because there was a lawsuit. My attorney filed a lawsuit, And everyone knows, well, not everyone, but most people know that insurance attorneys are notorious for hiring private investigators. And rightly so, because many people will fall and then they will exaggerate their injuries, and they'll say, oh, I'm confined to a wheelchair, or I can't walk, or whatever. And then they'll have that wheelchair outside, but then they'll come back in their home and they'll just stand up and be able to walk fine. And so because they're looking for the money, or they're looking for a payout. And so that is, unfortunately, people are dishonest, and they try to pull something over on whomever they can get away with doing that. And so this um so um insurance companies, yes, insurance attorneys do hire private investigators to make sure that the injuries claimed are legitimate. And so when I kind of lose my train of thought, I just want you to know it might be a residual from the brain injury. However, I have healed so much, and I dropped the lawsuit. Um, but I've healed so much because in the beginning I was stuttering. I couldn't remember anything. I had to have total darkness. I could barely see or hear. It was just horrible. But I just prayed a lot, and did my own type of healing, which at some point I'll let you know what that is. And I recovered. I do have a little bit of a residual, and so sometimes I lose my train of thought. But we're all aging, right? And so I can't focus on the negative. I have to focus on how amazing the human body is, and how we are able to heal. And so anyway, but those PIs, I think they were the ones with the little derby hats, that would just kind of stand there and watch you. But this gentleman that I had met, who said, you're being watched, he said, it's not just those. He said the other group that's following you is the more serious group. And I said, how do you know? And he said, he showed me his Facebook page, and he was a mercenary, and I had never met a mercenary. And I guess you know what a mercenary is. Well, um, they're like hired killers. I think that's what they are. And he said he works for, he is like an investigator for a police department, which I won't mention names. And I said, oh, well, that's really good to know. And he said, no, you don't want to know them. And you don't want them in your corner, actually. So I was like, and this was like after a brain injury, and I was like, this is too much for me. I don't want to hear all this. But anyway, he said, I will protect you. And he said, I'll park behind you, because again, I had spent all my money trying to get down there, and renting this car and everything, and packing it up with whatever luggage I had. And so I didn't have any more funds for a motel or anything. And so I decided that I was going to have to sleep in my car. And this was all going to be a new experience for me. And so he said he'd park behind me, and while I slept, he would protect me. And so I said, okay. So we were together for about 2 weeks or whatever, and I really felt very safe and secure, because I figured he really knew what he was doing. And then all of a sudden, one Sunday, he disappeared. And about 2 weeks later, I think it was, he appeared, and he said hi, and I said, oh, yeah. I said, did you abandon me, or why didn't you even say goodbye? And so he said, well, I have to tell you, he said, I've had an interesting time while I was away. And he said, I was standing by the beach, and a woman with white hair, short white hair, approached me and came on to me and invited me to go back to her hotel and have dinner. And he said, and we stayed in the hotel for, I don't know, 2 or 3 days or whatever. And then he had said that he went to Florida. No, yes, he went to Florida or something, or he was going to go to Florida. But then he said he met my children, and there were all, they had a condo. My children had condos. She had a condo in St. Petersburg, and that she stalks me 24/7. And I said, well, who is this? What are you talking about? And he said, it's your sibling. And he said, she's on your phone. She stalks you 24/7. She hires professionals to terrorize you. And I thought, and that was like a light bulb moment, because I really didn't believe that someone would be so obsessed. Certainly not my family, that would do things that were totally terrifying. And he said, and talk about the bus injury, that wasn't just an accident. And I thought, oh my gosh, she really is trying to kill me. And so, I didn't doubt that, but yet I didn't focus on that, because the goal was, my father divided his estate into two, so we were to each get 50%. Well, apparently, my 50% was fairly attractive to her. Anyway, one of the things she did disclose, he said she was an event planner. She lives in Las Vegas along with Florida, where she lives in Bel Air with her husband, but she also has a condo in St. Petersburg. And again, I don't know if any of this is true. I'm just reporting what I heard, because I know nothing about this. I've written her about saying, let's discuss the distribution of Daddy's trust, but I hear nothing back. It's kind of like, well, I've gotten it now. I forged the document and it's mine. And so you can write me all you want. But if you think I'm going to respond, you're delusional in any event. So he told me that, in fact, she claims she's an event planner. And I said, an event planner? And he said, yeah, an event planner. And can you guess what kind of events she plans? Events, yeah, to kind of do you in. And I thought, that's really sick. But he said, just one more thing. And I hope you're sitting down for this. But he said she offered him $2 million to do me in. And I said, oh, did you take it? And so anyway, and that he said, I won't find my money because it's hidden offshore. It's well hidden, and my children are brainwashed, and my relatives, and that every man that even approaches me, that calls me on my phone, she contacts first and flies in to meet them, and has an affair with them, so that they don't want to have anything to do with me. And I guess it's that competition or something, kind of twisted actually. But she reads all my emails, and she's involved in every aspect of my life, including all the litigation. And so again, I don't know if any of this is true, and I am just reporting what I was told. But what I was told was so shocking that I don't know that anybody could have really made this up. And it did corroborate with what I was experiencing. And at one point, he did say that there were nine cars and trucks that were hired to just scare the shit out of me, excuse the French, and that they would do maneuvers around me. And yeah, they were seriously well-equipped individuals who could create a lot of harm. You know what I mean? I don't want to go into the details anyway. And that she was even involved in my brain injury, and because that was supposed to really kind of finish me off. But thank you God, that I'm still here and healing. Yes. And and everything I do, she's involved in. And I remember my mother, in one of the videos I said, my mother called her the kutala. And the kutala is a Greek word for wooden spoon, that kind of mixes everything up and gets involved in everything. Well, yeah. What do I hear? Something outside. Somebody's screaming. Anyway, people are screaming outside. anyway, it was just the way some people create pain for others. And so, again, she meets up with every man, and they did spend some time in the hotel together. And she was involved in the break-in of my storage in Phoenix, my storage facility that had all my wigs and my costumes from all my videos on mariahaiti.com. And what she really wants are my books. And she wants to just put her name on my books as if she wrote them. So, but he did say that, she and my children, it's like they're just living one big happy family and they're all kind of fat and happy. And she has a condo, and my kids have some condos, I guess, in the same building in St. Petersburg. I don't know. But anyway, they're all together. They spend holidays together. And so all I could do is just be glad that my children are alive and healthy, and I trust that they're happy. Um, I don't know how you can be happy when you've abandoned your mother, but and you know that your mother, um, you've taken everything that she has. Isn't that kind of creepy? I think so. But anyway, you know what? Um, Anyway, I had nothing more to do with this man. And when he would text me talking about his sexual encounters with my sister, I would block him because I said, I'm not really interested. Thank you very much. But he was stalking me after that for a while, and in kind of big black cars with the really dark tinted windows. And so, I didn't think that it was appropriate that I had anything more to do with him. And I didn't even ask him if he had even met her husband, but it's not my business, right? And so there was one more time that he was there, and I think he was there. Anyway, it was when I knew I was being terrorized. Maybe it was during that time that he was gone. And I knew that I was being stalked and that there were all these trucks that were just driving around me. And everywhere I'd go, if I'd go into the grocery store, there are guys that had like the really low hung pants, and everything. They'd be following me and looking at me. And it was just different types of stalkers because, with all those trucks, just different kinds. And so, the so I mentioned that to the Santa Monica police. I called them and I said, I'm being stalked and followed, and I'm afraid. And I want to tell you where they are. And the one officer actually laughed and said, tell me, so you think you're being stalked? How would your sister describe you? And I said, what? And I said, you mean like a diagnosis? And I said, what does that have to do with the Santa Monica police? And the officer on the phone said, well, how would she describe you? Would she describe you as maybe delusional? And I thought, oh, okay, I rest my case. Because in the event that someone doesn't believe that she's very disturbed and is very obsessed and would try to preempt me when I try to ask for help from authorities, you know, it's delusional. That's just the way she'd like to describe me so that I don't have any credibility. And that's just the way it is. And also the bus driver from the Greyhound bus, pushing the button, because as soon as you get on that bus, apparently there's a button where the bus driver would push that in order to close the door when he's seated. And so, in fact, as he got on the bus, he pushed the button, and I was the next person in line, and that's why it hit me. And so that couldn't have been an accident because he came right directly in front of me. He cut in. He knew I was there. And those buttons aren't pushed by themselves. And in fact, my attorneys did write that down in the lawsuit that they filed. And then I knew that there was a lot of sabotaging, so I really didn't want to go through with that litigation. They actually said there was a trial, but it was going to just so happen to be held on her birthday, on my sibling's birthday. And I thought, oh, I don't think this is something that I'm going to engage in. So in terms of besides that and the continual poisoning and the other crimes. And I said, oh, forget it. Uh, Also, there was, when I was in South Pasadena, I was in my car and I was frightened because, again, I was being stalked. And so I went to the South Pasadena police station and I said, this is my situation. And I would like to know if I have permission to park in front of your police station because it was on a busy street, um, where it's well lit, and I can feel some sense of security and safety there. And so I pulled up, and it was very interesting because I guess that they knew I was there. And then another car pulled out, and um, the stalker from Florida, which I will tell you a little bit about him, but he actually came out of the police station holding a big brown envelope, and then he then got into this black car that was waiting for him, and they drove off. And I thought, well, that's interesting because this guy lives in Indian Rocks Beach, Florida, and here he is in South Pasadena, just coming out of the police station where I had just pulled in, uh, asking for security and safety, and so I just thought, ew. But I really did feel, hunted. But what else can I tell you? Oh, and he's the person that in Florida, I had tried to get 3 orders of protection against him because he would show up at places where I was about to go. So if I called somebody and I said, in fact, this is an actual truth. I said, I have to go to the dressmaker and I'm going to take something it needed altering or something. And so I said, I'm going to go there and then I'm going to go to the health food store. And so when I got to the dressmaker, he was there. And it was this little Greek lady. And so she and I used to talk Greek and stuff. But in fact, he had, I guess, just poisoned her because when I walked in, she was like, oh my gosh. And so I had tried to get 3 orders of protection, and each time his attorney said, oh, but this gentleman isn't even here most of the time. He spends 1 month here and then 1 month on some oil rig off the coast of Africa. So he's not even there in Florida, in Clearwater, to stalk her. But that wasn't true. In any event, I couldn't get the orders of protection because his attorneys and the judge said, there's no problem. He's never been violent to you, so we don't have any basis for an order of protection for you. And then he had a friend that lived in my building. So when I'd walk to my car, he would be screaming obscenities from the balcony. And I thought, that is just so rude. I can't believe people would actually do that. But another time, oh, he did. He actually, it's the health food store. He was running around going, these are her bills. These are her bills. And I guess he had a bunch of, I don't know if it was American Express bills or something. That's what the checkout person told me when she saw what he was doing. But he's like holding these up, saying, these are her bills. These are her bills. And I'm thinking, what are you even talking about? But he was the one that actually, when the person I came back from Brazil with, and I were living in my condo in Florida, one day we were getting in the car in the garage, and this guy, who obviously was watching me on all the cameras, he just came in the garage, and then he was going to, I don't know what he was going to do, but he was going to hurt me. And so my friend intercepted, and then the two of them started fighting. And then they were kind of like running around, and I'm calling the police, and I'm screaming for neighbors to come out and help. Nobody came out, but finally the police came, and they did arrest him. And then the state's attorney filed a lawsuit, I guess, filed some type of a suit against him. And then there was this trial. And this happened on Martin Luther King's Day. It happened on January 16th, 2012, I think. And then by October, the trial was over. And then my friend and I went back to Brazil for a while, for a couple months, maybe 3 or 4 months. And that's when I came back, and my sister had changed the locks, and my son had changed the locks to my home, and we were left homeless. But that was, and then this guy supposedly, the judge wouldn't give me an order of protection because she said there was no proof of violence. Well, you have to wait until the guy mercilessly beat somebody before, and it would have been me, and I would not have been able to defend myself like my friend was defending himself. But and we saw him. He followed us to Brazil. He followed us back to Florida. He followed us to North Carolina, where we went after we lost our home in Florida. We went to North Carolina, to Asheville, and then up to Maine to Big Island. And then we went cross country to California, and we would see him on the expressway, and he would like zoom past us in his red Porsche. And so, and then in Arizona, he followed us, and then in Oregon, and then in Santa Monica. At the beach there, I saw him. And so he was like a bad penny, and when I would see bad pennies, I think, why? I just don't understand. Why do people want to behave like that? I mean, I would have spoken with him. I would have talked to him. Why the violence? Why the insanity? Why the craziness? Why the jealousy of even my sibling and my son? And why the thieving? Sometimes I just don't understand. And I understand, I have enough psychology background to know that, yes, you can't change people. At the same time, spiritually, I understand that we're all divine beings. And so I'm just totally befuddled, if I could say that there's so many wounds, and so much healing that still needs to be done. And so how did these souls become so fractured? And how is there so much hatred when you could have love, you could have joy, you could have companionship, and generosity, and benevolence, and kindness, and consideration. And yet people do the most insane things, and there's so much darkness in the world. And so that's what needs to be transmuted, because it's such a waste of a life. We need to heal, and we need to take this all up a notch, and raise our vibrations so that we see the goodness in people, rather than letting our ego take over, because that's really what it is. It's a matter of ego. It's like, I want to be better than you, and I want what you have, and I'm going to take it, and I'm going to get it, whether I have to beg, borrow, or steal, but I'm going to take it, and I really want you not to have it, right? Because that makes me better and more powerful and more in control of you if I have what rightfully belongs to you, right? And so, anyway, and then the American Express bills. Oh, and then he's the one that actually ruined my car. He sabotaged my car, and then I didn't have a car. And then he bought me a car, and then he sued me for the car, and then I was left with no car. Can you imagine that one? Yeah, well, and that's another form of control. And so he left me with nothing. And when he sued me, I couldn't afford an attorney. And so I was left to defend myself. So I had to play lawyer. And, they just destroyed me on the witness stand. And the judge was not aligned with me at all either. And so it was pitiful. And so all the players got him off, and not only did he have my car, but he also just got a slap in the hand for bludgeoning, my partner in the garage. It was a really sad commentary, and I think that's why I've experienced so many ridiculous situations at the hands of the legal system. And it really is for me to see how much we can improve uh, what we are currently experiencing. And oh, someone told me about someone else that was just getting a divorce. And in fact, oh, I know, they met a homeless person, and this homeless person was drinking wine, and they offered him, I guess it was in Chicago, and it was like, I don't know, 10 below zero. And these people had a storefront, and they said, come inside and sleep in here. And he said, no, no, no. And so they sat down with him and spoke with him for a while. And they said, how did how did you get into this situation? And he said, I was a physician. And he said, I went through a divorce, and my wife took everything. She took everything, and she took my children, and she took my home, and she ruined my reputation, and she contacted, all my fellow physicians, and I'm just so destroyed. I have nothing. No one talks to me. And the only joy I have is numbing myself with a bottle of wine. And when I heard this today, I just thought, oh my gosh. I did remember reading that in Canada, many men are committing suicide because they can't afford two residences and the child support. So there's just got to be another way. I know that there's another way. And yet, sometimes people say, well, you bring up all of this stuff that is really, we don't want to hear that. We want to hear good and positive. Well, that's wonderful. But, we all have a shadow self. And we all have darkness within us. And we can't just keep sweeping it under the rug. We need to bring it out into the open so that we can handle it, so that we can solve it, so that we can find solutions, so that we can come up with a better way of handling things like a divorce, because divorce will always be there. People come together for a period of time in many cases. And then after that, for many people, there's an expiration date. And then they grow apart, and then they find new partners, and then they learn the same thing. And so sometimes it's serial marriages. But in any event, the fact is that there is a better way of separating. We don't have to go from being lovers to being haters. That's just ridiculous. But oh, also in terms of the stalkers, I think a lot of this has to do with the stalker that I just mentioned, but it can also relate to other stalkers. When I was living in Florida, I didn't know people there, and when I'd meet someone, if someone would come in my building or they lived in my building or whatever, and then they would bring me flowers or they'd leave flowers by my door or whatever. I was just glad to get to know more people there because I just knew my parents, and my sister I didn't really have anything to do with, and so I would meet people, and I all of a sudden that was a whole different phase of my life, because there I realized in retrospect how violated I had been and how abused I was, because I was so confused that many times when someone would come over and bring flowers and a bottle of wine or whatever, and we'd sit and we'd have a glass, and then all of a sudden the next morning I would awaken and I'd think, oh, wait a minute, I'm so confused. Um, and I realized that people were slipping things in my wine or even in my tea, or I don't know if they happened to bring a pastry. I didn't really understand where this was coming from, but I do remember that I even remember one incident very clearly where I was laying on my bed and I looked up and someone was taking a picture of me, and I didn't even know where I was or anything. And I thought, I must have been drugged because it was just so bizarre. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know what was going on. And I think that that does happen to a lot of people. I don't know if it's the date rape drug or, the Bill Cosby thing, or I think it happens much more often than many of us realize. And I think some people just think, oh, I just drank too much. Well, I know that wasn't the case with me. And so it was actually some type of a narcotic. And and there were, I noticed there were satellite dishes above, and there were towers across the street and on the roofs. And, um, well, I can go into all kinds of things. In any event, they had unlimited money, unlimited access, and basically unlimited everything. And so that's enough for the stalking right now. In terms of the medical and the dental issues, um, again, I just never, I'll tell you my thoughts, as unbelievable as they may sound, in Arizona and in California and in Oregon and now in Florida. I am convinced that, at least for me, I can only say this for me, that there has been a sabotaging of medical tests, including labs, ultrasounds, and reports from the doctors reading the results. I absolutely know that the results are not accurate. And when doctors perform the incorrect tests, when, for instance, well, my ex didn't really want me to have the medical care that I needed when he had paid someone to spray me with the pesticide, because they realized it was a poison instead of a neurological disease, right? Because it was a neurotoxin, so it affected my nervous system. And so instead of somebody saying you have MS, the doctor said you've been poisoned. And so I think the same thing is going on here, where I am slowly being poisoned. And my family's behind that, because my ex, who is no longer in this dimension, I guess he passed, I'm not sure when, but I think it was in 15 or 16. And when I realized that he passed the baton to my sibling and my son. But in some of the reports, they miss entire organs. And so I do believe that, just like the bus driver, you know, um, I do believe that when it said on the reports, it says it appears or nothing was seen. Well, if you're not going to look in the right place, you're not going to see it, right? Or normal as visualized. Well, how exactly did you visualize it? So on ultrasounds, um, on CT scans, on x-rays, I know a lot of times if I have an x-ray, and I don't have many x-rays, but in the event that I do, they'll repeat them 2 or 3 times, and they'll say, you know what, we probably didn't get as good an image as we could, so we're going to do that again. And I know it's just to blast me with radiation. And I'm not accusing any particular person of this, because, again, I don't have the proof. I just know what I experienced. So this is just all my perception. And so I do know that when I had an MRI in 2017 in Arizona, and what that they did tell me, well, there was a really weird guy who actually helped me um, put my things in a locker. And then he was kind of like walking all around and watching me. And then he went and was standing next to the technician that was doing the MRI. But after the test was over, the tech said, the test is over. And yet they didn't pull me back out. You know how the MRI tube or whatever pulls you back out, and then, you can get up. Well, they kept me there. And they kept switching the currents, the electric currents. And when they switch the electric currents, that is what creates that loud clicking sound, that pounding sound. And they had my head in directly under where the rays would come. And so where the waves would come. And so I thought, well, that's very weird. And finally, I spoke up and I said, hey, you know what? I thought you said this test was done. So I went out of here. And they just continued to blast my head. And anyway, um, that was that. Other times, let's see, what can I tell you? And I remember, I know this sounds so unbelievable. And I remember even during my divorce when I said, I know this to my attorneys, I'd say, you wouldn't believe this, but I really felt sick or whatever. And I'd say, I don't want to sound like I'm paranoid. And my attorneys would say, you're not paranoid when it's really happening. And it's really happening, Maria. And I'd say, oh, okay. Um, and so, in terms of, let's see, if you don't mind, let me just look at my notes 1 second. Um, oh, I know. In terms of the MRI, unfortunately, because of all of the poisoning that I had, at one point in Arizona, they diagnosed, I think, 5 cysts that I had, or maybe it was in Oregon, actually. But in Arizona, they did find a 9 millimeter, 11 millimeter cyst on my pancreas. And the gastroenterologist said, I want to do a follow up in 6 to 12 months. And this was in 2017. And so then I left there, and then no, I guess I was still there until 19. But anyway, I got sidetracked. And so even though I had the 5 cysts on 5 different organs, um, it said I went and had a repeat ultrasound because they wouldn't do an MRI. So they did an ultrasound, which is not nearly as conclusive, right? And so it said my pancreas was normal as visualized. Well, I thought, so what happened to the 11 millimeter cyst? And that was in 2012. Then I just recently had an ultrasound because I'm trying to monitor just how accurate these results are and truly the state of my health, right? We all want to know. And so, what it said, this is what he said. The report read, the head and the body of the pancreas appear normal. But that doesn't tell me anything about the cyst, does it? Didn't tell me if there is a cyst. Didn't tell me if the cyst is no longer, if the cyst has disappeared. Or they just forgot to mention the cyst. And 11 millimeters is a sizable cyst. And the other gastroenterologist, from Arizona wanted me to have a repeat test. And so all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's just gone. And you know what? That would be the best news if it were really gone. But I want to make sure that we didn't just miss that part of the organ, or the organ looks great, but what about the cyst that's attached to the organ? Maybe they just didn't want to mention that, or what. And there was another time with kidney stones. I don't know if any of you have had kidney stones, but in Arizona, I got 2 of them. And I think it's because it's so dry there and I was dehydrated and I didn't drink enough water. And so there was a little one on the right kidney and a larger one on the left kidney. And so I had lithotripsy, which is where they go with shock waves and they break it up. So they broke up the the kidney stone on the left kidney. But what happened was, and I had general anesthesia and they were shocking it with shock waves. And all of a sudden afterwards, they did a scan and it was still there. And so I thought, oh, either the machine was turned off or they hit some other organ because they did nothing to that kidney stone. And so about 3 months later, I passed it. And, I don't know if you know about how painful kidney stones are. And that was the point of the lithotripsy, in order to fracture it so that it would easily pass and it wouldn't be painful. However, that didn't happen. So I still had a kidney stone on the right one because it was a small one. And so they weren't going to do the lithotripsy. They were going to watch it. And if it got bigger, then we'd do that. But it was still on the right kidney. And so in 2002, yes, just recently, I had an ultrasound. And what the doctor reported is that on the left kidney, it said no stone. Well, we know that there's no stone on the left kidney because I had the lithotripsy, right? And it said that there's a small cyst on that organ. And then on the right kidney, it said that there was a cyst, but it didn't say how large it was or anything. And it didn't say that there was a stone or wasn't a stone. And just like on the left one, he said there's no stone. On the right one, he did not write that there's no stone. But he also did not write that there is a stone. So he mentioned nothing about the right kidney. Actually, there was no cyst on the right kidney. So he mentioned nothing about the right kidney. So that leads me to believe that it's kind of guilt by omission, right? Because why do you why would you report something like that? You would totally, you would say that there's no stone on one that you know there's no stone, and the reason for the test was because I wanted to know the size of the kidney stone on the right kidney, and so you wouldn't even write no stone or stone. Anyway, I know I'm repeating myself, but and in terms of lab values, sometimes I feel like I can just kind of write them in because I don't really believe that all of them are accurate. I think many of them are, but at the same time, especially those that I might have an issue with, I think that they're not accurate. And I'm thinking, how did my sibling, how is she able to convince so many people to tamper with my results? I guess it's just the same way she has people tamper with my cars and tamper with my food and pay people to come into my home and tamper with my food and the restaurants and, you know, and then with the cardiologist, when I had a stress test, actually, the tech said, you know, there's an issue here. And the reason I went for the stress test is because when I had the pesticide dousing, it affected the electrical activity of my heart. So my heart was skipping beats. And so I thought, I'm being poisoned. I'm continually being poisoned. And I wanted to know about the electrical activity if I was having that issue again. And so I went and I had a stress test, and the tech said, well, it could be happening again. Maybe if you are being poisoned, it is affecting the electrical activity. And so said, we'll show this to the cardiologist. Well, the cardiologist said, oh, it's a false positive. Don't worry about it. And I said, well, you know, because I have this history, I really would like to have a repeat stress test to see if it is a false positive. So we did another one, and they would never give me the results. And I even went to that office and I said, could you please give me the results? Give me a printout. I'd like to examine them myself and read that EKG. And they said, oh no, we're not allowed to give out any information like that. And so they said, if you haven't heard from us, if we haven't given you a call, then you're just fine. Don't worry about it. So, you know, I just, the same thing happened when I had to find a primary care physician because of the brain injury when I had just arrived in Oregon. And I found a primary care physician, and what he told me is he said, you were hit by a bus? And he said, and so is there a lawsuit? And I said, well, yes, I have spoken to an attorney. And he said, I don't get involved in lawsuits. And he said, and plus, he said, there's nothing wrong with you anyway. And I said, really? And he said, you know, I'm a physician for some high school sports team or something. And he said, those guys get hit in the head all the time. And he said, there's nothing wrong with any of them. And he said, within 6 weeks, you'll be fine. And meanwhile, it had been like 2 or 3 months. But, and I said, you know, I'm not fine, unfortunately. But that's just, and so he said, oh, and then that was really weird because he actually started asking me about my personal life. And he was saying, so are you married? Are you this? Are you that? And then he said, do you have children? And I said, yes. And then he started asking me about my children. And I said, you know what? I'd rather not talk about my children. And I said, because we're really not in contact. It was a very acrimonious divorce and we're not in contact. And so then after that, he kind of like jumps up and he walks out the door and he says it loud enough so I can hear. And he's like, perfect. And I'm thinking, oh, they're going to try to talk about my lack of communication with my children as part of some type of defense for the bus. Maybe that I'm delusional. Yes, it's probably the delusional one. But in any event, God only knows all the things that my family has been trying to sabotage, and so I just can't deal with that really. And so um, let's see, what else can I tell you? Um, oh, I can tell you about my dental work. I went and had a crown put in, and the dentist was filing it down because it was too high. He filed it down, and he filed it down so low that when I bit, my teeth didn't connect. And so I couldn't chew my food. And so he said, oops. He said, I think I filed them down too much, because when you put the carbon paper, and you bite, you're supposed to see the impression from the of the teeth, and where there's contact from the upper and the lower jaws. And I mean, the upper and the lower teeth, the jaw is on the bottom. And so he said, oh, don't worry. I'm not even going to charge you. It was like $1,600 or something. And he said, I'm not going to charge you, but I'm going to make sure that they make another one, and I won't file it down so much. So I said, oh, well, that's very kind of you. Thank you. And so 2 or 3 months later, they called me and they said, we have it in. So I went there, and he hammered out the temporary, and then he cemented a new one in, and he did it, and that was the same fit. And so he said, oh gosh, I'm really sorry about this. I guess we'll have to send it back to the lab. So he had to hammer that one out, and then cement the new one in, or cement the old one in. And so I left and came back a second time, and then for a new one, and then the same thing happened, and then the third time, and then the fourth time. And then I realized, you know what, I'm being played. It wasn't a new crown that he got each time. It was the same crown, and he was trying to traumatize that tooth, hammer it off, and then cement the new one in, and then we would just keep doing this. And I did this. I had 5 visits or something ridiculous like that. And as I stopped by the grocery store as I was leaving, because I said, you know what, I'm moving. I'm leaving California, and I'm moving to Arizona. And so I stopped by the grocery store, and as I was at the checkout, you put in that card and it says, welcome, Maria. And and then there was a flashing picture of the Chicago skyline. And I thought, oh, that's very interesting. My ex is up to his old tricks again. He just, so between the doctors and the dentists and the techs and the cardiologists and the ER doctors and the nurses, you know, um, whatever it was, it was. And so, and the same thing is true with the medical insurance. When I tried to get medical insurance here, and because of my lack of income and my only Social Security, um, I have Medicaid. And so doctors don't even want to look at you when you have Medicaid, because they look at you and they think, well, what's the matter with you? Why don't you get a job? And I feel like saying, well, I've tried to get so many jobs, but my family keeps sabotaging them, or something is wrong. And yet I'm a very capable woman, and I can do a lot of things, but somehow it wasn't meant to be for some reason. And so, like, I did get dental insurance at one point, and they were to remove it from my account. It was an auto billing or something. And then they called, then I got a letter saying, we haven't received your payment. And I'm like, but I gave you access to auto payment. And then they said, well, you send us a money order for the last 2 months. So I did. And I said, and you're not going to cancel my insurance, right? They said, no, no, no. And so I sent in a money order, because that's what they wanted, not even a check or not even a Visa. And so they wanted a money order. And I realized it was so then they couldn't refund it, or I couldn't complain about it. So once they wanted the money order, and then they canceled my dental insurance for non-payment. And I called, and then they said, well, you can send it to arbitration. And so I said, yes, I would like to complain about that. And because I think it's highly unfair, and someone absolutely told me, send in a money order, and we will definitely not cancel your insurance because it's our fault. You gave us access to your bank account for us to withdraw the dental premiums. So anyway, um, yeah, they said, well, we've decided, we held a hearing over it, and we've decided that we're going to cancel your insurance, and we're not going to refund you the money. And then here I tried to get medical insurance, and I was actually on hold from 7 o'clock in the morning when they open until 5:30 in the afternoon. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's what, 10 and a half hours because they would not pick up. And I don't know if they can flag my phone number or what. I cannot imagine that other people and it was just a repeat message, you're next in queue. You'll be next, or your number, 18 in the queue, and then your number 18 in the queue, and then your number 18 in the queue. And so, things are just crazy. And then they wanted an asset disclosure. And so I filled out a form in January, and they told me I would have medical insurance in January. Well, in April, I still didn't have it. And so they wanted me to come in, and the supervisor said, what assets do you have? And I said, I don't really have any assets. And then I thought, this is a trick. And so I thought, well, I do have assets. I just don't have control of them. I have millions of dollars of assets, but somebody else controls them. So what is that? I don't have any assets, right? Otherwise, I wouldn't be filing for Medicaid. If I could pay for my own insurance, I definitely would. Um, and so I didn't know what the right answer was. So in any event, my beautiful friends, this is the end of today's episode, and tomorrow's a new day, and it's full of wonder and joy. And thank you for being here with me, and thank you for listening to this. But the whole point is just that, sometimes there is a lot of darkness around us, and we have to understand that it's there, and we have to face it. We can't just be angry about it. We have to look at it and say, why is this happening? And who's responsible for this? And ultimately, we are responsible because it's our energy. And so, again, I'm not letting anybody else off the hook. I'm just saying that on a soul level, you know, um, we are expanding, we are learning, because these are all tests. And the way that we can see if we've passed the test is to see that we aren't flying off the hook. We aren't going crazy. We aren't doing road rage. We aren't, screaming and yelling at people. We're looking at it for what it is, and we're saying, you know what? These are really wounded people that get their jollies by trying to torment us. And so that's just sad for them. But we're not going to let that affect us. We're going to do the best we can and keep going, right? And so anyway, you just keep doing your shadow work. Don't push anything under the rug. Don't let anybody get away with anything. Face it. Talk about it. Confront them, but in a peaceful way, in a nice way, in a gentle way. And so until next time, I just want you to know that I love you, and I thank you for being here with me, and I'll talk to you soon.